So yeah, I'm just going to do a few minutes on project file. We'll talk a little bit about stuff. So um, the project file and records management and why it's important and why we do it and how we do it and how we are going to work to kind of make your lives a little bit easier, hopefully. So just an introduction on project file contents, developed in the latest version of the PDE manual, Part 1, Chapter 15. It was specifically designed to talk about project file and records management. Part of the department becoming part of NEPA assignment and getting those roles and responsibilities from FHWA, we had to have a very thorough process for how our project files were going to be organized, what was going to be in it, also the active management of those files so that we know that we have them up until the time that we're retaining them as long as we're supposed to and we have access to them and stuff. So we developed this chapter to make sure that we identified all the various elements that are included as part of that project file. That could be anything like the environmental document, supporting materials, the technical studies reports, any of the public involvement stuff, the transcripts, the documentation, any kind of correspondence with our agencies, whatever the case may be. Anything that really should be in the project file to support the environmental decision, whether we're talking about our SEER, our state document, or a federal document, it's all considered to be part of the project file itself. And part of the reason why we do that is if and when we ever need to produce an administrative record. So an administrative record doesn't always exist. A project file always exists. An administrative record only exists when there happens to be a litigation or a challenge. And then we worked collectively between ourselves, the district, and our legal team to make sure that we pull together a responsive administrative record. So when we do that you need to have all documents, all materials, directly or indirectly considered, that we, the department, relied on when we made the decision. So whether that's a SEER and that gets challenged, whether it's a NEPA document gets challenged, we've got to make sure that anything that was part of our consideration is part of the administrative record and is made available to those that are filing litigation, and it becomes the record that we're going to work with the judge on for how we determine, or we help the judge determine, whether or not we followed our process and did everything consistent with how things are established in our manuals. FDOT's official record of NEPA decision making, that is your administrative record. So the last bullet on there, if it's not in the project file, we hear from the attorneys all the time, then it didn't happen. So you have to make sure that any of that stuff, any of that coordination document, those emails where a decision was made, if you made a commitment to somebody, whatever the case may be, you got to make sure that it's all in the project file. And there's lots of requirements, and I'm not really going to breeze through too much, but there's lots of, each one of the files that go into the system are all tied to different retention and access requirements. There's lots of rules and regulations tied to it. We've got a lot of them spelled out in Part 1, Chapter 15. We have a records management policy signed by the department that tells us about all the record series and how long we keep stuff and when do we dispose of it and all of that. We've got within the NEPA assignment realm for how we collectively as an agency deal with the federal records. And so we developed a policy that allows us to maintain the records for 5 fiscal years after the completion of the project. And we developed processes in place that look at the FM numbers associated with the environmental documents being developed within SWEPT, and it connects out to the work program database. And we worked with the work program folks that we look at these FM numbers, and as they close out, those FM numbers get shut down. So that's when the project is complete, all the invoices are paid, the people who did the construction are happy, and eventually that FM gets closed out. When that FM gets closed out, we begin counting 5 years after that project is completely closed out. Well, one of the things we know in the environmental project arena is that you can have a PDE that results in lots and lots of projects. So There could be lots of different constructible segments. Those segments could all be moving at different paces, and these ones are in design, those ones are in right-of-way, these ones are in construction. And so it becomes important through all these processes to make sure we connect up the original FM, PDE to all the children FMs that became all the constructible segments all the way through. And so if there is a PDE that results in 10 or 12 other FMs that get their own life and kind of work through the system, we have a parent-child relationship that knows that this parent has these 10 FM children, and it keeps track of all of those children. It never starts counting the 5 years until all the children FM have reached to a 100% closed on the FM number itself. So once all of the associated FMs are closed, then we begin counting the 5 years on that. Just another mechanism up here. This one is for the federal documents. They have their records disposition manual that we have to comply with, and that is probably one of the big bases for how we manage things today in the system. And just to kind of show you within SWEPT, and we're going to do more detailed stuff within SWEPT, but we want to show you that how we're going through things. The intent is while you interact with this system and you're developing the environmental document, that behind the scenes, we're actually taking the documents that you produce in this system, these actionable documents, these decision documents, and we're storing them and we're managing them and we're putting them into what we call the EDMS, Electronic Document Management System. There's an official electronic document management system that's recognized by the department. All the various areas of the department all have their own library. We have an environmental library that's in there, and as you work within the SWEPT system and you add things to the project file or you approve a document, you do a certification, you do anything, all of these documents are then stored into the official electronic archival system, that EDMS. Those documents are also flagged for retention and disposal, schedules associated with those documents. And while you're doing the uploads and just kind of grabbing these documents, you're actually putting them in these other spots as well. And the information you're using to describe the documents, like we know what FM, we know the name of the document, we know where you're putting it, we know when it got approved. All of these details kind of behind the scenes are effectively managing the document itself, so we know how long we need to keep it. And one of the things that's important about the EDMS is that it's there for long-term storage and retention. So it's also like if we have a hurricane, it's disaster recovery, and all of those various elements are part of having that particular interface. So when we have the project file, and this is sort of on the left-hand side, you see how these things go. And if you're the one that's creating these elements, you actually would have a button to the right-hand side that allows you to create or upload. And you just basically navigate to something, just like you would add a file to your email to send it to everybody else. You would go navigate to a file, you would upload it, and you would name the file and store it in that area. There can be, within SWEPT, there can be various roles that are responsible. Obviously, the project manager is the individual is responsible for that particular project file, so they want to make sure it's complete as possible. They can have team members that are part of the team that their only job is to upload things, and they're not part of the approval process, but they're helping you upload and store stuff into the system. So it all just depends on how things are organized. Again, a little bit on that EDMS, I think we've talked about it, so I'm going to skip it and just show you that upload interface is a lot better than this interface, which anybody who's worked for the department for any length of time, this is actually the interface that allows you to store the documents into the electronic document management system. So knowing all of those attributes and dragging it and adding all these things, this form still exists. When you interact with SWEPT, we're actually filling this out for you according to what you're doing within SWEPT. And you're not needing to know all of these document groups and types and how things are being stored and where they're being placed within the system. All of those elements are just happening behind the scenes. So within SWEPT, you're uploading stuff, you're doing your project attachments. By just working to develop your environmental record and your decision and development of your project file, it's doing all these other things. Okay, so it's got consistent naming conventions, and the point I was trying to make is we tried to make the naming conventions in such a way that when you just look at the file name, you should be able to know what the document is without having to open it up. That becomes really important when you're looking at all these other systems, and if you search for a document on an FM, you could come back with hundreds and hundreds of documents. Being able to quickly know what the document is without having to open up each individual PDF to see what it is really important. The interface also allows you to have access to all the documents in a very clean interface. It's all internet-based, so you can be anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter. You can be on your computer, you can be on your phone. It doesn't matter, and you can have access to that information. This is just an overview of what that naming convention is. It actually has some sense. So you've got the FM number, the class of action, the district, the document name, which you can actually enter yourself, and then the date, and then just some description. So everything in the system, this is how the file name is created and appended. And so within SWEPT, you get to an overall project page. And in this project page, you've got some details. You can link over to all the various work program places, TIP, STIP, the work program database, the PSE, so Project Suite Enterprise Edition. You can get some details about it. You know who your project team and everybody's working on it. You've got a map. And then as you drift down, you start to see the overall project content. So you've got some project documents, and you can see in here the ones that have been sent over to EDMS, how they're sent to EDMS, so you know that they're there. This won't mean much to you, but it means stuff to us, and you could still click on any one of those and get over to that system. And this is just a little showing you how you upload the document. So you go in, you want to add a document, you click on it, you browse to it, you put a name in, you put a publication date if it's different than what today is, but this was published last year, you put in last year's date, and it adds it all in there. And then you see on the file name, it pulls it together consistent with the standard for how things are being organized. And then just a couple slides on how you find a document. So if when you log into SWEPT, and we'll give you some more details to this, up in the upper right, we call this the golden search. You type in anything, it'll bring back various search results, projects, documents, and people. You click on one of those, it takes you to the interface for the project itself and all the details. So if I scroll down, there would be all the various project files. You can do searches to find specific documents. Every time you see a hyperlink, it'll actually open to that project file. So here's a recent list of the non-major state actions that you guys just recently did as of Monday of this week. And then I click on one, and you can quickly get over to that non-major state action, the 17 supporting documents, and then links over to all of those as well. And as you can see, it's already been approved, it's already been published, it's already over there with all those various elements. And then the other part that I just wanted to show you guys that I'm not sure everybody really understands is that because we're storing things in the EDMS for long-term storage and management, it also makes documents available in other department systems that are able to read from the EDMS. So for instance, if you have Project Suite Enterprise Edition, so PSEE, and while you're in the module, you actually open up there's a little module menu, and you turn on environment, and then scroll to the bottom. There's a spot that says Enterprise Environmental Documents, and now it says click to collapse, but previously it said click to expand. And if you expanded it, you would see all of those same documents. So these are all the same ones that were created and published within SWEPT that are also available in any other system that's able to read those electronic document management system storage files. So So I thought that was very interesting. And then the other thing I just wanted to highlight was just the idea that another way you get to these is through all the various notifications. One of the things about having all this stuff is as things move throughout the system, there are notifications that kind of prompt everyone through the system. So whether it's this was just reviewed or this needs to be approved or whatever the case may be, you don't really have to be in the system all the time to know what's going on. You'll just get email prompts that it'll kind of tell you what the next action is and give you access to go complete that action. And so I guess the big thing is, for the reason why we talk about doing things within SWEPT, is there are lots of core requirements that we have. We have to have a project file. We got to be prepared for an admin record. We need to be able to store stuff. And when you work within the SWEPT interface, the same time that you are developing the actionable approved document and building the record, you're actually handling all those other things simultaneously. You're handling the putting it in the long-term storage, how it's going to be organized, how it's going to be managed. You're handling it so you can retrieve it from any location in the world on there as well. So just wanted to say that there's a lot of work that's required, but I think that you can see as you work through SWEPT itself, it actually does a lot of the work, at least related to project file and retention and development of the administrative record. I didn't show you, but there's actually a tool within here that the attorneys have access to, where if a project is in fact looking like it's going to go through litigation, they have a mechanism where they can actually develop the administrative record directly out of SWEPT, which will create a Excel spreadsheet with color-coded sheets to break all the documents out by the types of documents they are, with links to the documents themselves, and it's all kind of bundled up in a zip file that they can then put on a flash drive or share with someone in support of that administrative record function. So that was all I have. I know, sorry, my audio is crappy. I guess when we break for lunch, I will turn it off a couple of times and see if that gets better. Are there any questions for me before we break for lunch?
There is one from Doug. Okay. Can you explain who is provided access to SWEPT? I know outside consultants have to request. Do all FDOT people have it?
So SWEPT itself is an environmental program. So the folks that have access to SWEPT, the way you gain access is you work through your local environmental management office. They identify what work you need to do. So because it's a web-based application, you have roles and responsibilities that are assigned to your level of access. You could be someone that just needs to see the information. That's great. You need to be someone who needs to have the rights to help create project files. That's great. You might need to be someone as a project manager who's responsible for the project itself, and you might even have some approvals. And then you have higher level access for individuals who are part of the review and approval process. So it's not just automatically open to everyone. You have to work through your local environmental leadership. So in the district, we'd be looking at Henry, Rax, and Philip to provide access. They will send an email to that help desk email below and authorize the access, and we'll create an account with the right roles and responsibilities associated with it.
And another question, what about PD&E scope development in SWEPT? Others will need that access to SWEPT. That is.
Sure, that's great. And I don't know that we cover, oh, actually, Maria probably covers the PD&E scope development section at the end of tomorrow. But
yeah, that's correct.
Okay, great. And Brian, you're right. There is a module within SWEPT that just focuses on the development of the PD&E scope of service. So we've worked collectively to make sure that the language in that PD&E scope of service is up to date and consistent with what the approved language is. For folks to use the PD&E scope of service, they need to work through the district as well and be assigned. So just like another role, like you're working on an environmental document, there is a role that allows you to actually review and develop PD&E scopes of services.